And it's a conversation that I had with as she calls herself, a progressive. And I consider myself a conservative. I could say a moderate conservative, but she really got fired up. And she doesn't like Donald Trump. A lot of progressives, they just vehemently, anything. And I just say this, I preface this, and I italicize this. Anything that Donald Trump has done, they can't name one good thing. Everything's bad. He's a bigot, he's a racist, he's a homophobe, he's against, all their way of life. And he goes, we can back it up with facts. You just don't know where to go, blah, 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 blah. And then I get the links, and I find it's the most leftist newspaper out there that has zero credibility. Nobody republishes this stuff, any credible newspaper, even if it's the LA Times, even if it's the Boston Globes, the Washington Post, the New York Times, any of these entities, they do not say these things. But yet they subscribe to the most lunacy that's out there. And it's just, I let her just speak her piece. And ultimately, behind all of this, she has a child that goes to school, and she's just simply worried about her child. And so I asked her, I said, well, what do you feel about having teachers arm themselves? And she goes, no, never. And I said, well, just entertain me just for a second. It was very hard to be able to get in there. She, you always interrupt me. That's what always liberals say. But then you let them go, and then you go ahead and ask them a question, and they just implode. They just, deer in the headlights. It's just, but anyways, you arm somebody, and she says that's the problem. It invites more guns. Guns invite more guns, et cetera, et cetera. And she says, she overhit, dead body. She didn't want that to happen. And one thing that she was really frustrated about, it really just concerns me here, the Florida legislator, is that they're going to allow these semi-automatic bump stocks and all this stuff up in Florida to remain. They have these AK-47, they have the assault rifles and weapons here, that there's not going to be a discontinuance of that even after the massacre of 17 people. So I'm a little mystified as to why they're doing that. Now, I'm all for owning a gun or having several guns, but just, why you need a semi-automatic gun that acts like a machine gun, that have that much firepower where somebody can grab one of those things or buy one of those things and do that, I don't understand. But anyways, I said, if a teacher was trained and able to be able to take out that shooter before the police, because the police never entered the building there. No, she just didn't want to hear anything of that. And then she says, would you want to have any of those teachers? Have you talked to any of those teachers in the public schools? You would never want them to have a gun. They're unbalanced. And I'm thinking to myself, when she's telling me that, I don't know where your kid goes to school. My kid goes to school in South Tampa, and A-rated school. We did our research. I mean, we've sacrificed, literally, as parents, in the zip code that we live. I'm not going to give the zip code, but I'm just saying that parents do what they can to make sure that their kids are in the best schools. I have not met any of those teachers, even though I know that several of the teachers are liberals. There's nothing wacky going on in the classrooms. And I know that any of those teachers would protect my child. That's just the kind of school it is, and they have children themselves. But I, for one, would love to see more armed teachers and faculty that know how to shoot and use a gun, maybe more officers in schools, because loose cannons are going to get in. That's just the bottom line. But yes, if you can minimize assault rifles with that amount of firepower, and I understand people can learn how to build things and get things and do things themselves because of the internet shows you how to build these contraptions and you can get things for sale for the right price. I get all that. You know, if there's a will, there's a way. There's always going to be somebody that's going to want to go ahead and against the tide and just do something just so bizarre and so heinous. But she really got upset, man. She just bursted out of here in tears after our conversation because I said what I had said. What do you believe about these automatic weapons? Do you own one? Are you like the Marine that went viral, saying that he was going to give his high-powered weapons up? Do you think that's the answer? I personally don't think so. I mean, we have had to use firearms to win our independence, explosives to win our independence. This is how we protect ourselves. This is how we protect our homes. Police officers have to have guns, okay? Cold-blooded killers are not going to, okay, Mr. Officer, you don't have a gun. Okay, well, then I'll just put my gun down and we'll just fist fight it out. It doesn't work that way, folks. In a perfect world, cops are being ambushed. Hundreds of police officers are losing their lives in this country. There's just such a disrespect, not only for police officers, but for people of authority. And that's the biggest problem. And I told her, in my opinion, and a lot of psychologists will say this, the reason we have some of these bigger problems is because a lot of parents just don't parent. They don't parent anymore. And I said, you remember when we went to school in the 80s? Did you hear this garbage going on? You didn't hear this kind of stuff going on. Parents were able to crack the whip, literally. Now, some parents, they went a little bit too far, okay? Welts on your butt, but some kids deserved a good, hearty spanking. But it made you think, do you want dad to take the belt off and bare behind beat you? You just didn't dare do things because you had the fear of dad's belt, fear of God in you that you just didn't do it. And I had the belt and Jesus. You didn't do it. And if mom said no, she meant no. And you know she meant business. Same thing with my dad. There's one thing my mother could do, and I remember, she listens to this broadcast. She would just take it out of her hands a lot of times because she didn't want to deal with it. She had 5 kids. And she'd call my dad, and we knew it was all over because he would take care of it. Now, the dad ain't disciplining. Now, some of you parents still do it, but you got to be careful because these kids know they're empowered, that they can call their guidance counselor. But when it happens, sadly, they do an investigation, they get removed from the home. So it's kind of not a bad thing if you really want to get out of the house and get into a foster home. You find you're probably in a place you don't want to be. There's a difference between disciplining your kid and beating him. There's a difference. Yeah, I used to think I got beaten, but, I don't have any permanent bruises. All right, so if I really gotten beaten, then I'd have permanent things going on. It didn't feel too nice, but it was a good reminder. A lot of these kids, they grow up and they have no repercussions for their behavior. And none, zero, zilch. And they don't like to be told what to do, period. And then when somebody does, they kill you. They turn into thugs because they're, why do kids, they say, why do they join gangs? Why do they do these things? Because they're looking for acceptance. And that's not just here in the United States. This is all over the world. Gangs, people are looking for acceptance everywhere. And they can't find it at home. They can't find it because their parents are just not anywhere to be found. Now, I know some kids are not easy. I get it. I've had 3 girls. I got one at home. She's, 15 now? And the 2 older girls were adopted, or I adopted them, when I moved in. But they were from my wife's first marriage, and they were 4 and 5, and I raised them. But they had a real dad, and I took flack. I took flack, but I always told them where I stood on things, and I always give them, the values that I grew up on. And a lot of times they didn't want to hear it because the real dad didn't give it to them. But now I see them as parents, and I know for a fact that they're not going to let their kids get away with what they did. You got to crack the whip. You got to discipline your kids. You got to give them a talk and conversation. And, even if it doesn't appear that they're listening, they're always listening. That's why I like the PSAs that you hear. They're listening, even when you don't think they are. Brought to you by this station and the Ad Council. You got to continue having a talk with your kids and spending time with them. Spending time with them, not when they're just little kids, little babies where they're, fun and they don't talk back. You take your kid on a fishing trip. Take your kid on a vacation. Go to Disney. I know it's expensive, but, you got to make a way to show your kids that you really give a darn and you care about them. Because long after you're gone, they're going to have those memories. You got to make good memories. All right, folks? Here's a report from the Marine Corps, and this is not just the Marines, that this is all services, but they're saying that less than 30% of young Americans qualify, this is sad, to serve in the military, period. In a House Appropriations Subcommittee meeting on defense, Marine Corps Commander Robert Neller told Congress that it's a strategic issue, that less than 30% of the young men and women of our nation are qualified just to join the military, either because of physical, mental, or moral issues, the general said. So now we're down to 30%, and now we have to find those that have a propensity or a interest in doing this. And that's a challenge, an interest in even doing this. We don't want to sacrifice quality, said Major General Jeffrey Snow when speaking on the issue in late 2016. If we lower the quality, yes, we might be able to make our mission, but that's not good for the organization. The American public has come to expect a qualified army that can defend the nation. He says, I don't think that the American public would like us to lower the quality of those joining the Army if they knew it's going to impact our ability to perform the very functions our nation expects us to. Which leads me to the very sad realization that patriotism is taught at home. It's taught at home. And if you don't have somebody in your life that has served or is serving, and that doesn't touch you, and you haven't listened to the stories of somebody that has listened to a vet and their experiences, and you need to reach out to a veteran. You need to educate yourself on what they did, where they went, what they experienced, and understand the sacrifices, the immense sacrifices that the family made, that the person made to join the military, and what that meant to them, and what that meant for our country. So many of us enjoy the freedoms every day, and so many of us, we forget how valuable the freedom is. But it never was free. It was paid in blood. Paid in blood. People died for your freedom. There's a Phil Collins song that's Another Day in Paradise. It's an older song that came out, and I heard it on The Blend. I listened to Sirius XM radio on the way in. You know you're getting old when you're listening to The Blend. But it's it's a good format. I like it. They play a little of everything. It's kind of a mix station, like Mix 100.7, but you listen to it, and it's iHeartMedia or Sirius XM. I think they have a stake, don't they? They own a certain amount of, yeah. So anyway, we live in paradise, ladies and gentlemen, here in the United States. We do. It's not perfect. And one of the biggest prices living in a free and open society is we do have, unfortunately, people that will do heinous things like kill police officers